first of all, I'd just like to thank Vector for all of their help and support. Everything I'm going to show you with what we've done as a company would not have been possible without Vector's help and assistance. And the second thing is that I've done my best to make my presentation kind of not about our company and more about, the overall industry. But as a new entrant into this space, I found that very difficult because we are still learning as a company. And so please take my presentation with a little bit of a grain of salt in that regard, because we're going to talk about where we are, what we're doing, and what the implications, at least we believe, are to the things we see in the charger industry. Our company was founded in 1895, and we actually have a charging history, which we didn't know about until we actually started to get into this new initiative for us. So on the left-hand side is the founder of our company driving his electric car around 1910. It was a Baker electric car. And it just turns out that our factory, our first factory in Cleveland, Ohio, was right next to the Baker Electric Car Company. And we were providing charging solutions. And the ad that's next to it was an actual advertisement from the early 1900s about Lincoln providing charging solutions at the time. And so as we got back into this particular space, it was like Back to the Future for us in that regard. It just so happens that when the internal combustion engine came out, it killed this whole initiative from our company, and we moved on to something else. So for us, what was that something else? Well, we're the world's largest welding company. About $4 billion in sales, 56 facilities, 11,000 employees, et cetera, et cetera. And it was an interesting kind of idea. Our CEO came to me one day and said, hey, what else do you think that we could do as a company using the core competencies of the Lincoln Electric Company? And challenging, let's say, everybody in the room, as I did at that point in time, I had to think differently than about what we do. If you think of our company as a power conversion company, not a welding company, then it was really easy to get outside the box of what we were doing, being the world's largest welding company, and say, well, if we're good at power conversion, taking AC and turning it into DC and manipulating that DC current in meaningful ways, in that case to do welding, then other huge opportunities opened up. So I looked at 4 different industries. Steel mill level induction heating, for example, silicon wafer growing for the semiconductor industry, large data center uninterruptible power supplies, stuff like that. And I settled on EV charging as a potential new industry that our company could get in. And so one of the things that I think is interesting, being a new entrant to this particular space, which is, 10, 12 years old maybe, right? Was we are, as a company, a poster child for exactly what the administration would like to have happen with all the incentives. Very successful old line companies looking at the EV space and saying, how can we contribute in a meaningful way to this transition? And we elected to get into this, the charging space, because it matched best what our core competency is as a company. We didn't ask for any money. We don't need incentives or anything like that. But we're just going to talk about what our journey was to creating what we believe to be a much better solution in terms of EV charging. I think you've all, if you've driven an EV, maybe experienced some of these things when 25% of all the fast chargers in California are broken at any point in time, okay? And then throw on top of that, roughly 15 to 20% of all charging sessions fail when somebody just plugs in the vehicle for 100 different reasons. If we, as the world's largest welding company, had a success rate that looked like something like between 25 and 40% failure rate of our solution to our customer, we wouldn't be in business, okay? As a frontline welding company for all the GM truck frames, all of the F-150 aluminum bodies, we provide all those solutions. For automated robotic welding, for example, it's $100,000 an hour for downtime. So coming at building a company around response times and sensibilities about making a quality product when it's $100,000 an hour if you fail, okay? It puts a whole new spin on, in our opinion, what it would mean to make a successful product in the charging space. So we've created something that we think is a lot more sensible for creating a much better user experience. The two pictures on the right are the typical charging topologies that you would find at any of the ones that are out there. There's nothing bad, but inherently, they're designed by taking off-the-shelf analog components, a little bit of Rockwell, a little bit of Honeywell, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, put it together inside a box and say, this is my charger. Again, nothing wrong with it per se, but every one of those analog components has got to be point-to-point wired together. Every one of them has to be lugged and inserted in a terminal strip and torqued down and all of that. We as a company found in the 50 years of making what we make that that just is not a recipe for success, okay? Because our products as welding machines have to live their whole life outside. And we've been doing it for 50 years. I will tell you that we've learned something in those 5 decades of making power conversion devices that live their whole lives outside. And part of that, of the sensibility of our company, is just to bring that to this particular space. So that the device that we put together was just simply totally different. It is completely digital, not analog. It is at the board level. Everything that's there is embedded in the electronics. The components themselves are all basically impervious to the elements. The PC boards are an inch thick, completely encapsulated in epoxy, okay? So what to look for, in our opinion, right, is a design that is built to live outside, okay? Not just by taking components, but by integrating them into a purpose-built structure, right? Minimize the number of connections. Look for E-coated sheet metal, if not stainless. We use a lot of stainless in our design. Look for 100% duty cycle ratings. One of the things that I was intrigued about when looking at this industry, being new, again, I've only been in this for 2 years now, is a lot of derating. Like, hey, this is a 350 kilowatt charger. It is a 350 kilowatt charger for precisely 4 minutes. And then it has to derate itself down because it simply can't hold up under that kind of output current for very long. So again, in our opinion, that's not a really good approach. So we focus on 100% duty cycle. We don't believe in liquid cooling. Again, nothing inherently wrong with it, if you will. We just don't think that that's the best approach for the industry. If you have to liquid cool the electronics, you're rejecting way too much heat inside the device, right? So just look for, let's say, other things. Again, these are our opinions. Redundant functionalities at the hardware level, system level diagnostics. Your charging hardware should be able to tell you everything that's going on inside the device, all the way down to the component level. If it can't, then there is some compromises being made. If your only connection to the charger is via OCPP for diagnostics, it's a very limited data set that you can get from the device itself about what's going on, right? So again, in our opinion, look for the ability to get deep inside the device. Well, that's airflows, component temperatures, all the things that you would hope that you could look at and also do big data on, if you will, to think of predictive and preventative maintenance type of structures so that you can get the high charger uptime. And of course, look for a service infrastructure. Our strategy, again, totally different than anybody else. Very, very few connections. We have customers that, on the welder side, will say, I cleaned out my welder by taking the case sides off and I power washed them. So, I've never heard of somebody that power washes the electronics, but our customers do. We don't recommend it, but they do it, okay? In previous designs, I don't think that would work. So you also want to look for other things, right? You want somebody who is truly vertically integrated. Why? Because this industry is moving very rapidly and changes happen overnight. Whether that's on the vehicle side or the charger side. And if your cycle time on design changes is measured in months or years, we're not going to be able to respond fast enough to what's happening on the vehicle side. So I, in our opinion, want somebody who's very much tied in and can handle everything. High domestic content. So our product is 75%. Everybody is chasing the June requirement in the charger side to have 55% domestic content. And that's a good thing. I was disappointed when the administration waived some of the local domestic content requirements earlier or later in last year. Hopefully they stick to the higher domestic content, because that's exactly what we want to have happen in the industry, right? It's a lot more American-made products, as was mentioned by the previous speaker. And also the ability to scale, because if we're going to have 30% of the vehicles on the road, that charging infrastructure has to get built. And again, it has to happen quickly. Of course, you want partners on that have all of the certifications, but I'll also say, just again from our opinion, look at the other ISO things. 14001 for sustainability, 45001 for OSHA safety requirements and things like that. And I would say that this is also something that is a bit of a circular, because there's all new SAE specs coming out. Again, they just published the SAE spec on the North American Charging Standard plug and things like that. So the ability to respond quickly to the changing market space is hugely important. And when plug and charge comes on in a big way. So make sure that there's a lot of, you're dealing with a partner who has all the certifications. And then again, just look for service. So it was kind of interesting to me as a new entrant into the charging space when some of the folks that are trying to get a footprint here in the US would just go to the fueling side, go to Gilbarco and just say, hey, will you be our service arm? Because at least you have a nationwide footprint fixing fueling pumps. They don't know anything about chargers. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just that there's a lot of new relationships trying to be built to try and create the kind of structure that the industry needs. On our behalf, thankfully, we don't have to do any of that because we already have that with about 1,000 service techs already in the field. The other thing, it's not just about the hardware, you gotta think about the software, of course. So on the onboard side, so in a charger, right, you wanna be thinking about, again, those system level connections for the diagnostic side, the ability to really deduce if there is a problem in a charger, exactly what's going wrong, so that your service truck roll or some other remediation can be very effective. You wanna keep that separate from OCPP if possible. Because again, OCPP is fundamentally kind of limited in what you can get when it comes to the charger hardware itself. Of course, over-the-air updates, but I read an interesting article that, one of the people just pushed a really nice over-the-air update they thought was good and broke, 30 or 40% of the chargers out there because the over-the-air update process was not robust enough when it came to functionality and interoperability. We can't have that. We're, as a charger manufacturer, trying to always make better product, but we've got to have business processes, engineering processes, that make sure that the rest of the system stays robust. And then at the charge management system level, again, if you are partnering with somebody on the CMS side, there's a lot of fantastic companies out there. We're certainly not an expert in that area, but we've selected a partner. But make sure that there's somebody that actually has a proven track record, has really good voice of the customer processes, because that is the thing that the customer is interacting with, whether that's on an app. And so you want to have a partner that's really in tune with what's going on in the space. Of course, those release timing confirmations to make sure that, again, that nothing's being broken. And then in our opinion, right, just really native language speakers and making sure that the support and everything that's needed is here in hand. So what to look for in a high-performance charge management system? Of course, you want the network administration functions, site-level insights, exactly what is going on at every charger itself, as well as across the station. Multiple OCPI. OCPI is really the Open Charge Point interface, so that's the cloud-to-cloud integrations between charge management systems, payment systems, all of that. So you want to make sure you find somebody who's got multiple OCPI connections with tested protocols and data encryption, One of the things that we learned as a new entrant into the charging space was we didn't want anywhere near the financial transactions because of data protection, privacy, all the things that cybersecurity. That's actually not easy to stay away from them. But we figured it out. But you want PCI compliant payment partners with robust cloud backends, and of course the ability to grow as the demand grows. So in that charge management system, network level admin ability, so you can look across all of your potential customers as well as an individual site host, so that you can provide the KPIs and provide the data that even the federal government is requesting around charger uptime, or what's happening at each station with respect to the customer experience. You want a really robust driver app, of course. The big complaint now is I got to have 25 apps on my phone if I want to go across the country. Hopefully, as OCPI integrations happen, as plug and charge happens and comes across the industry, we can, as an industry, make that really simple. To Alan's point, if you are going on the road and you do need 300 miles, you're going to stop at one of these places and you're going to have to figure out, how do I get this done? Hopefully everything works well. Our objective as a company is to make sure that it does work well. In that charge management system, you also want to be cognizant when you select one about having open ADR, which is really the demand response functions. As Alan mentioned about the grid, I tell you that demand charges on the grid side could kill the actual financial impetus to make a charging station. So you want to make sure that you can manage as best as possible, if you're the site owner, the demand response side. And then, of course, payment strategies. So just making sure that not only is it PCI compliant, but that you can have the ability to manage pricing at the charger level so that the financial side actually works well. So that advanced kind of time and driver-based pricing strategy is something that you should look for sure. And then next generation interoperability, reliability. Of course, plug and charge is coming. There's a strategy out there today that mostly works. We think it needs to be a lot more robust than it is today, but that's fine. The industry will grow, things will evolve, and it's all about making it easier for the customer. Don't take something away that they already enjoy, if you will, but it's got to be a much better customer experience than what's out there today, for sure. Data. So, one of the things that we find super interesting, again, being a new company in the space, is actually what's happening. And the beautiful thing about EV enthusiasts is that they're very vocal. They will tell you exactly what's going on in their world. And so you can follow things like rate your charge, for example. So the tweets that are in the bottom port are just customers telling the industry about, this is my experience. The green bars are actually in the chart actual data from Rate Your Charge as to what customers experienced. And I know you can't read it, but basically what it says is that all the green bars outside of Tesla are in the 25 to 40% range of failed charging sessions. I wanted to charge, I couldn't charge 4 out of 10 times in that particular 3-week example. As an industry, new person on the industry side, to me personally, it's just an indictment of the whole industry that Ford and GM just go and run to Tesla. It's like, hey, we've been trying this for 10 years and you've made such a crappy customer experience that we just got to go to somebody else. That doesn't feel comfortable, right? As a new person, we think that there's something to add to that. But you want to have the ability to monitor everything that's going on in real time, do predictive and preventative maintenance, make sure that everything is working well even before the customer has a problem. Also be able to incorporate user feedback right away. If I'm standing in front of this charger and it doesn't work, and I as the manufacturer know why, I should fix it right away, right? And a lot of times that can be done through software. And the big data side, will kind of apply as the rest of the infrastructure gets built out, so that we can do things like anticipate what are the best locations. It would appear to have one over here, or what are the best power levels to have, for example. based on the vehicles. So there's a lot of opportunity, in our opinion, to really help transform the customer experience today, including, of course, the charger side. Last quick bit for me is just, as a new person, it's interesting to me that the basic assumption is that if you're a battery, every charger looks the same. And if you're a charger, you assume that every battery is the same. And that just to me seems fundamentally wrong in the industry, because charger technology can grow, battery technology is obviously going to grow. Those two things are two variables that have an impact on each other. And it would seem to me that if the charger side and the battery side got together more completely, that we could create a better solution. So I just offer this one current one. A company by the name of G Battery has done a lot of work on what happens at the battery terminals. And what they found is that at the terminal level, as you try and push more energy into the battery, the terminals form dendrite. Dendrite is a morphology of nickel that resists the ability to put more energy in. And what they found is that by changing the charging protocol, or sorry, the wave shape, if you want to call it that, they could resist and permanently change the amount of dendrite that forms in the terminals over time. In this particular case, it was to pulse charge the battery. So take the battery, give it 700, 800 amps for a couple milliseconds, and then take it down to 0. So at roughly 10 hertz, take it up very high, bring it back down, very high, bring it back down. What they proved is that they could reduce the charging time on a battery to about 5 minutes. They could significantly increase the battery life with fast charging, despite, the general feeling is if you fast charge all the time, your battery will degrade rapidly. They proved that that's not true. If you change the charger, the way it charges, by pulse charging. And so I just throw it out there. It's interesting, from Alan's perspective, why is all of the research on the battery side when in reality there's a significant component of the charger side that really should be married together with what's going on there? My assertion is that if we work together, we could create a much better overall experience and product. Selfishly, we're really, at this moment, the only company that can do that, because we're very, very good at manipulating the current. And partially why a lot of there hasn't been much advancement in this is because everybody assumes that a charger looks the same. So every charger company has the same target, which is be just a constant current charger. In reality, that's maybe a bad assumption. So that's really all I had. I hope I got us back on time a little bit, but definitely open it up to questions. Just again, want to thank Vector for having us and for being a super big supporter of what we're trying to do in this particular space.